morning to you. All right, here we go. So Catherine, thank you so much for sharing some of your time with me. You know, the reason why I was so excited to talk to you was that yesterday on the tour here at 7ACRES, you know, you were one of the first people that I met, and you were surrounded by beneficial insects, and I'm like, ooh, my people, right? And as you gave me your part of the tour, I realized that you were doing something that a lot of other folks in cannabis say they do, but in practice they don't, and that's integrated pest management. So for many folks, you'll ask somebody, what their strategies are for IPM, and they'll say, we spray, which is just like one thing. Or you say, what's your integrated pest management? They're like, we use beneficial bugs. And that's just one thing. But when I came here, you're responsible for millions and millions of dollars of plants, and you showed me a whole array of strategies that you use to keep the pest pressure down, and you integrate them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is legit integrated pest management. And so I'm really glad that you had a little time this morning so that maybe you could lay out the strategy to give folks an idea of what it looks like scaled and done with a proper budget, right?
Yes.
So would you please start with, kind of just walk us through your strategy for keeping pest pressure low here at 7ACRES?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I will talk about my job all day.
Great.
So we do a very integrated approach. So I work with production, sanitation, our own department, and our focus is more on prevention and not reaction. So we've found over the years that the best way to keep our pest pressure down is to not have them in the first place. So we track, we have our scouts, they track everything. So if there's a plant alive in our facility, one of our trained IPM staff is looking at that plant once a week. It's very intensive, but we track everything that could be weird looking or, oh, what is this? And we do it so often so we can react quickly to any issues that may arise. And I can call one of our suppliers and say, I need X, and I have it next week, and we don't see anything the week after. We also work with sanitation, so they're doing a phenomenal job in this facility, and that is actually the key to a successful IPM program is the cleanliness. We're not seeing any recurrence or very minimal reoccurrence of pests in rooms, and we work together very closely. I don't know what you just switched your spray to on turnover, but it is working. Please keep that up. We also do formal monitoring with sticky cards in all our rooms, and our beneficial insects is actually our soldiers on the ground that are really helping us. So it's a very intensive program. We receive our bugs on one day, and the next day they are throughout the facilities. So in any given week, for insects, we're applying 350 to 400,000 in a flower room, and they will hunt out all the little bad guys and keep them at a very, very low pressure, which is amazing to see.
So let's start at the beginning, and
Sure.
we'll poke a little bit at each of those, okay?
Absolutely.
So first of all, you mentioned your scouting staff, right? And I was able to see, it was amazing to find out that all of these analytics in your scouting team, everybody's all connected by computers and spreadsheets, and when folks are scouting and they find something wrong with a plant, that plant is marked and it's put on a spreadsheet and on a map of the room, so you know exactly where it is, so then you can monitor the plants around it. I was fully enthralled. My question is though, is you had all this big color code of all the different things that the scouts are looking for.
Yes.
And some of those things, I didn't even know what they were. So will you give us an idea of the variety of things that the scouts are scouting for?
Oh, absolutely. So primarily they're looking for pest damage. It's quite easy to see. Fun fact about humans is we can see more shades of green than anything else. So when you're confronted in a room with that many plants, it seems like a daunting task, but once you do it a few times, you actually, oh, that doesn't look right. What is that? And then we'll look and see, oh, okay, no, it's nothing, or it could be pest damage. They're looking for bud rot, like mold. They're looking at root structures. So if we see a plant and the leaves might be a little off color, so we're pulling down the root bags and taking a look and saying, okay, well, they're okay. Now what? Is there damage on there? They're looking at the whole stalk, all the leaves, everything, which is, it's a lot, but they look for that. What else are they looking for? Pretty much anything that doesn't belong. So once you've been in the rooms a few times, you get to, even though every strain is different, you get to know generally what cannabis looks like. So when you see something, that doesn't belong, and then we jump in and figure out what it is. So we look for physical damage, harm to the buds, pests, any foreign material that doesn't belong in there. It's a lot.
The sheet there, the spreadsheet that you showed me, where you were marking off the individual plants, they had that long list on the right-hand side with color coding. How many different categories do you think there were for things that the scouts had to check off? If I had to guess, I'm guessing there's maybe like 14 or 15 categories of the types of damage they're looking for. Yeah.
That's about right. It's anything that could damage the product, the final product, and we also want to recognize, okay, is this an isolated incident or is this spreading? So if we find reoccurring instances, we have a number code as well. So I can look at that map and say, okay, well, we found this on this side of the room and the same thing the next week on this side of the room. That might be caused by staff movement, in and out of the rows. And if we pinpoint something and then we start seeing it all around, okay, well, this is something that is spreading from this point, so we can go in and make the decision. Is this going to affect our crop? Do we cut the loss and get rid of the plant, or is there a way that we can treat this? Should I just do a hotspot treatment and bombard this area with Persimolis or Swirsky or lacewings, depending on what it is?
So, so even before the scouts are going in and going down this very specific list of things that they might tick off, I'm assuming that just because everybody was in such heavy gear, right, that is probably step one, is just to make sure that the people are not bringing in stuff from the outside. Then they're not moving it from room to room. So will you give us a brief understanding of how the gear we wear and the magic things we're all stepping on? Like, give us a little context for what that stuff's doing.
Yeah, so everything is controlled. It's almost like a research facility type. You wear your street clothes in, but then you are issued a clean uniform every day. There's an outside company that launders them and brings them in. I think it's twice a week. So you change into that in our change rooms. You have dedicated shoes for Zone 2, where all the grow rooms are. And going into the rooms, if we have a very set order that you can go into the rooms. So our nursery and our vegetative rooms, where all the production crops are coming from, is a very set order. You can go from one to another, but if you have to go backwards, you're going out, you're taking a shower, you're getting a new uniform.
Interesting.
Into every room, you're wearing gloves. A hairnet is worn at all times in Zone 2, even in the hallways. And we use isopropyl alcohol, 70%, to clean our gloves.
And that's like in every room too. Like,
yep,
as you showed me around every room, it's like present your hands. And at first, I after at the second room, I'm like, oh no, I did that in the other room. Like and they're like, no, let's do it again. Every room,
yep.
Yeah.
And going in and out, we have boot baths for your shoes, even though they're dedicated to Zone 2. I mean, there's all kinds of operations and debris, so it's they just changed it. I believe it's Stirback that's in there now, and it just is just to wipe the bottom of your shoe. And if there's a room that may have a potential problem in it, it's restricted even more. So our tolerance is actually kind of akin to ornamental crop greenhouses, in that if we can isolate an issue to a room, it's a very low occurrence, and we will find it in another room. So the staff going in there have even more procedures to follow. So when they're exiting that room, they're taking off their hairnet and their gloves. They exit the room. We encourage them to not interact with other staff members in the hallway. If they have to go into another room, shower, and change your uniform. We go through a lot.
Well, you know, that's what I was thinking too, is I really enjoyed the fact that you don't use Tyvek suits. Because, like, you know, I tour in Tyvek all the time, and that stuff gets used once and it's gone and it ends up in a landfill somewhere. But I like the solution here where I didn't see any Tyvek, but everyone was wearing 7ACRES, like, I guess they'd consider like golf shirts, long sleeve golf shirts, and what are essentially like sweatpants or like hospital pants.
Yeah, like scrub pants with the pockets.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so, and you just send those off to have to be washed and come back. And I like that because, you know, there's already enough environmental degradation from our industry, from the light usage and doob tubes and all this other stuff. You know, being able to at least get rid of Tyvek, at least we're going in the right direction, right?
Absolutely.
So, so let's talk about my favorite part, the bugs.
Sure.
So when it comes to the bugs, you know, I look at deploying beneficial insects and predatory mites in two different flavors. The first flavor is preventative. We don't have a problem today, but we don't want to have a problem tomorrow. And then we've got like what you were calling hotspot treatment, where, okay, we need to bombard this area. So what are your general bugs for prevention that you go for, and because you want to play defense for particular types of pests?
We generally use beneficial insects that are polyphagous, so they eat a variety of things. So we do green lacewing larvae for primarily aphids, but I mean, they eat everything. So if there's something and it comes across them, they're going to eat it. We do have 2 sachets that are breeding systems that'll both extend the life of the mites that are in there. So we use Swirsky and Californicus for whitefly and spider mites, respectively. The sachets are cool, and they have on the carrier there's a fungus, and there's actually 2 kinds of mites in there. They have feeder mites that the Swirsky eat, and little holes, and they crawl out, but they'll breed and have eggs. So actually later on today I'll be ripping open some of ours and seeing if they're still viable. We get about 3 weeks out of them in the flower rooms, which is pretty nice.
And it's good to point out, though, when you get the sachets, you know, rookies sometimes will receive the sachets and they're like ripping them open. That's not how they work, you know?
No, if you just look for movement, you might be seeing a feeder mite you don't know. So you need actually a microscope of some sort, or even a really good hand loop. You need about 60 to 80 times magnification to see the difference, because they are very similar in size. But once you see the difference between them, it's very obvious that is not what I'm looking for. And we do soil applications to deal with larval stages of, fungus gnats primarily. So we do nematodes and schematis. I can't pronounce the first one. Stratiolaelaps. I think I got it.
That's really good.
I got it.
You got it. So all right. So that is your primary defense team, right? You're putting those in on a regular schedule, constantly and heavily, because you know, what do they say? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or something like that. And so, but sometimes, I mean, you may not have run into it in this facility yet, but sometimes things fall apart, right? And you've got a hot spot. And you've got an invader. So talk us through how your system would show that, how that would show up in your system, and then how you would respond to it.
We would find the damage first.
One of your scouts?
Yeah, one of the scouts. Sometimes even the grow room staff. They spend a lot of time in the crops, and it's a highlight actually of everybody's day. They come down to our station and they go, "We found something weird." And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to go see it." But our reaction is pest dependent. So our reaction to, say, aphids is going to be vastly different from thrips. So it depends on the life cycle of the pest, how quickly it can multiply, what stage of development the plant is currently at. If it's cooling down and that's going to slow their life cycle down, I might just go do a beneficial application as a hotspot. So I will reallocate some from another room. We run a little extra everywhere, so we have that leeway. Or I will call a supplier and say, hey, I need a parasitic wasp next week because I have this. And sometimes it will be a cull of the plant if the pressure on the plant is bad enough, or if it's a certain type of pest. Like when you have the very quick breeding pests like whiteflies or aphids, their life cycle, if you look at it, it's the definition of exponential growth, and that is very hard to control. It is better just to put a plastic bag over that plant and cut it down and get it out. Sometimes an insecticidal soap we will use. We try not to spray as much as possible. Maybe almost never. I think the last time we did a spray was like 4 months ago. And it's a call on a case-by-case basis. So if it's something like a thrip or a spider mite and it's one plant in a room, we're going to heavily defoliate that plant, and then I'm going to put as many predators as I can on that plant and all around it, and then we will watch it over the next 2 weeks and make sure that it hasn't recurred. If there's multiple cases in a room, I'm going to status that room, and people going in and out are very, very limited, and that way it won't spread to the rest of the facility.
I wish you had wasps in one of the rooms when I was on tour yesterday, because that's really cool. I've only ever seen them in books and in theory, right? We've got lots of different types of wasps.
Yes.
On Vashon Island where I live, and I understand that not all of them are stinging, and there's a lot. Not all wasps are threats, right? Most are our friends and pollinator allies, right? But then when I was going through beneficial insects and learning for the first time like 5 or 6 years ago, and I saw that there were wasps, I'm like, who the hell is going to let wasps go in their grow? And then as you read about them, you're like, wow, that's really cool. It just feels extreme. Did you run into when you're getting the staff used to coexisting with wasps in the room? Did you have to convince anybody?
It's an explanation, definitely, because you hear wasp and what, but the ones that we use are parasitic. So if we need to, those actually wasps are great for reaction and less so for prevention. So you need that pest in order for them to survive and be viable as a beneficial insect in your crop. If you don't, it's better just not to use it and use a mite instead. But if you have to bring them in, you let everybody know these are specific. They don't have stingers as you know them. They're not a bumblebee or a wasp. They're not going to hurt you. They're attacking if it's like an aphid, they're going to attack that aphid, and what they're doing is they're injecting their eggs in there, and then it hatches, and they're not going to hurt you. They are going to fly at you. And they do get stuck on our sticky cards, but it's one of those, they're really great. If you have an issue, just try to get one in there, because they're top notch as a reaction.
Right on. So I know at 7ACRES, you have a blend of cultivators, right? Some folks have cultivated cannabis in the past and they're straight up heritage growers, but also there's some people that you bring in and you train them up over the course of a couple years to be really good cultivator folk on the team, right? Is there, and I know I didn't warn you about this ahead of time,
no, that's okay.
But is there any particular incorrect expectation that you get from the people who have already got growing experience about doing integrated pest management that you're finding is pretty common and you often need to train out of folks?
Spraying is your preventative. That is the go-to, and it's been a go-to for decades.
Yeah, ever.
And it's It's a different approach in that we will have some and we will use it if we want to, but we want the cleanest product possible. So for spraying, it's very time consuming. It disrupts all our operations, especially at this scale, and it is awful. I don't like doing it. The team, some of them are okay, but I would much rather not do that. But that one is a big one, and it's a lot of integrated pest management, especially in cannabis. It's a new concept. So it's a lot of trying to explain, oh, yeah, you are finding these, a cricket or something in a hallway. I would like to know about that, because then the next couple days I'm crawling around on the floor looking for the hole. And one of the other big ones is you're not ever going to be pest free, ever. That is wholly unrealistic, but you take measures to keep it at such a level that it's manageable for you, and it's not going to cause any kind of economic loss. And the more vigilant you are tracking those types of things, you can, pardon my pun, nip it in the bud,
right,
before it gets to a problem.
Yeah, so you're not going to be able to get rid of all of them, but keep them lonely.
Yes, absolutely. You keep them very lonely, and they don't know what to do.
Right on.
Chances are, our lacewing might come up and just eat it.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Good. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for your time and your joy about this, right? I really enjoyed your part of the tour yesterday, and I knew that as soon as I met you, I'm like, oh, I want to talk to her some more. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Right
It
on.
was a lot of fun.
Fantastic.